open the meeting.
Let's do the big stuff first. Let's convene the meeting.
Your microphone has to be on, Ray.
Technology.
So
at this point, meeting is open. It's been convened. Now, I had checked and was told that I was not able to sit.
the April 17th meeting at 6 p.m. of my first hearing, Ray DeMonte called the meeting to order. He asked questions. He's probably read the minutes, I hope, so he should know that he was here. And if that's his reason for recusal, I don't accept it.
I accept I didn't get those minutes, so I accept what you said. But, all right, so I will sit.
So I will now recuse myself from my own hearing, and I will go.
You want to do the minutes first to give them some time? Okay. I'm just thinking till John gets here or something.
Okay, Carol, what do you have?
Hold off the minutes.
April 17th, right, Delia?
Yep. I believe the meeting was continued because you wanted to get the input from the fire chief and for the police chief. On the 17th. It's not open for public right now.
And did we also ask for the attorney's opinion on this? The town regarding the access?
Going back and forth, it's a complicated situation. And initially said he was going to attend by Zoom. And then he said he was going to attend by Zoom, but he might be late. And then he was going to talk to Cordell about possibly standing in for him. But he did not check with Cordell and he did not discuss it with him. So he was going to talk to us about it. Hoping that he's going to show up.
I don't think he is. I don't think he is.
Cordell, did you talk with him about that?
No,
You did not, so.
no. So
Yeah, you're not feeling very comfortable right now.
I know nothing about the case, unfortunately.
Yeah. All right.
So the problem is that if there is, there is a class 5 road in front of where Delia's house is.
Are you,
There's
do
a back
you have a,
alley.
stop. You have a microphone? Having been on the other end.
Okay, if you've looked at the maps that were in the packet, Delia's house is on a class 5 road. It fronts on a class 5 road, as do a number of other houses that are on that same class 5 road. And then behind it is an alley. And it is, you know, you can have Nate from Public Works, who is here, talk about how wide it is. I think he might have measured it or, but anyway, the access would be by a back alley, and there's not a definition of back alley. And the opinion that the town got was from Mr. Rhodes himself, Bernie Law. But it was back in 2001. And so 2001, and by the time Bernie retired, he may have evolved in his, I don't know. But you also have a copy of the opinion that Bernie Law gave the town back then. So when Jason was looking at it initially, because the town is doing some minimal maintenance on it, he was thinking that maybe it should be considered a class 5 road. But he wasn't sure about that, and he was going to do some more research. So I don't have anything from him other than he was going to do some more research. And on the 13th, he said, he verified with me when we were going to meet today and tonight. So
So at this point, we don't have anything new.
I don't have anything from him. No. I do have the fire chief here. I do have the public works here, and I do have the deputy police chief here.
I'd like to start with Ron. You're familiar with the layouts of these roughly three access roads. Get some volume.
You really do have to talk right into it. It makes a huge difference for the reporter, whether he has to turn it up to 98 or 40.
They're all maxed out right now.
It really close. It doesn't matter. You
Really?
have to be cool.
Great system.
Ron, let me ask you first. You're familiar with the issue.
Yes.
You looked into it.
Yep.
Please give us your opinion.
Well, I looked into it, and that alley is not wide enough to support my fire trucks. My ladder truck, I wouldn't get around the corner without driving over someone's lawn. And in the fire code, I provided that. It says fire department access roads shall have an unobstructed width of not less than 20 feet wide. And a vertical clearance of, I think, 13.6. That's in the fire code.
What is your opinion?
It's an alley. I mean, in the wintertime, I've consulted with Nate. I haven't had to go that back road in the winter, and it's not wide enough to get a fire truck down through there in the winter. So
Well, let's have each person speak, and then don't forget what you want to say in rebuttal. Excuse me, Ron, what else?
no, it's not a road that will support unobstructed access to any home being built in that alley. The homes along School Street, we access from School Street. That's where the fire hydrants are, and that's how we access the homes. If you build a home in the back alley and the road width is 10 feet, the trucks are about 9.6 wheel widths, that doesn't leave any room for error. And the guy's going to jump out into snowbanks when they get out of the truck. And in the fire code, it says 20 feet. We do have roads in town that are 18. They got variances for that, but I can't support building a home on a road that's only 10 feet wide.
Is that it? Anything else?
No, that's it.
Would you give me your opinion as a public works director?
So
Okay, good.
So I have a couple issues. One issue, two issues is sewer and water. Delia did bring up the fact that there's a manhole that she can grab sewer from. That's right on her property line on School Street, and she can get sewer to there. And I agree with you and that you can do that. As far as water is concerned, there is no water on Henry Lane, and she would have to dig across School Street because the sewer water use ordinance requires each home in town to have their own separate water service. And she would have to dig across School Street to get water. And I just resurfaced School Street last year. So I'd like to have somewhat of a moratorium on School Street because I don't want to trench across that road. So that's an issue. And if she wants to tie into the water with a home she already owns, I don't believe that that is a good idea because I'm dealing with that here on Main Street where the home, the apartment building just burnt down was tied into the home that burned down was tied together with Enzo's, and now he still isn't in business because we need to find a way. He needs to find a way to get his own water service, and I don't want any of that to happen again in town. So water and sewer, I can see she could, if she has the elevation, she could probably grab that manhole, and she outlined that in her rebuttal. As far as the width of Henry Lane, it's a challenge to plow. I cringe plowing it because I feel sorry for the folks that live on that every time I go down it and plow it, and so it's like a shared driveway. It really is. Henry Lane is like a shared driveway.
Based on what you said factually and based on your observances, do you see a public safety issue here?
As far as adding more homes and more traffic to the road, it could be. I don't know. I wait as long as I can to plow that road because it is a challenge, and I try not to make it harder on the folks that live on it. And I do it once, or I try to do it as few times as possible because it is challenging to get down there. I have a 10-foot wide plow. That lane shared driveway is like 10-foot wide. So there isn't a lot of room for me to place snow. If you added another home with 3-4 more vehicles, it'd be a challenge for everybody else around it. I don't know. It'd be like adding a home to your driveway.
What is your recommendation?
It's really not my place to recommend anything here. I'm just telling you that it'd be a challenge.
Anybody on the board have a question?
No.
Delia, did you want to ask any questions for,
Was the chief police here to,
excuse me?
wasn't there someone else to comment, the chief?
Oh, excuse me. Excuse me. You did look kind of official.
Trying to be official. I'm Scott McKinley. I'm the deputy police chief. The chief is away. I believe that he responded and said that the police didn't really have a position on this. And listening to the fire chief and the head of DPW, if you're going to ask me in reference to safety issues, I'm going to go with snow. If this is granted and she has people there and they don't park in the appropriate spots, if there's an issue on Henry Lane and we have to get emergency vehicles back there, that could be an issue. So we might have some parking. Other than that, I think we had one crash. Yeah, since 1999 when I left. The first time, then I came back. So I really will reiterate what the chief said. We really don't have a position on the police side. But I also believe that we have people in the positions here in town that we put there to make headstrong decisions in regards to these matters, and I'm glad that they're able to voice their opinion. That's all I have.
Anybody on the board have any questions for the police department? Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Any, anybody else with comments?
Yep.
Delia,
So if you look back at the application, this is an application for an accessory dwelling unit above a garage. And the garage, there is a garage on that property already. The garage is an old, small one-car garage. It needs to be replaced. This town has stated in the town master plan that accessory dwelling units are something that the town would like to approve. I take calling it a home. I already have a driveway there. I consider Henry Lane a driveway. I already have a garage there. I'm asking for permission to put an apartment on a replacement garage on that property as an accessory dwelling unit to a town that has an extreme shortage of rental units. Regarding fire, that property where the garage is, if I put a garage with an apartment above, there's 2 fire hydrants within 150 yards of that property. The truck would pull into School Street. That's the address of this property. It's 47 School Street. It's not B Henry Lane. Henry Lane is access to my back lot. It's where garages go on Henry Lane. I'm asking for permission to put an apartment above a new garage to replace an existing garage. Regarding fire again, if you look at what he sent in to for his opinion, he has the fire code on it. And it states the fire department access road shall have unobstructed width no less of 20 feet. He has that on School Street. The fire department access road should have unobstructed vertical clearance of not less than 13 feet. He has that on School Street. If he's saying that he can't use the hydrants that are 150 yards away to put out a fire on that back lane, it would be the same situation for all of those garages. Would they all burn down? I doubt it. The other thing on the fire department access and water supply form that he gave you all, I hope that you've read. It says where 1 or 2 family dwelling or townhouse is protected with an approved automatic sprinkler system that is installed in accordance with the NFPDA 13D or whatever, the distance shall be permitted to be increased to 150 feet. Now, if that's saying that I can do it and I put a sprinkler system in, then what he said is a moot point. So that's regarding fire. Regarding sewer, it states in the town plan that any accessory dwelling unit can tie into the unit that it's accessorizing in simple forms. So I can tie my water and my sewer into the house as long as the pitch is correct. It's not engineered yet. I'm asking for approval to be able to do that. That's stated in all the documents I've read. I can tie into 47 School. It has nothing to do with the water on the other side of School Street. I think regarding plowing, right now I live on Coolidge Street. Corbeil Lane is a smaller lane behind my house. I have a garage in the back. I think Nate does a wonderful job plowing. I love the lanes in this town. I'm not going to ruin that lane. I'm not their worst nightmare. The other thing is, if I don't get this approval, I can still put a 3-car garage there. It makes no sense to me that you wouldn't want to add another rental unit in Lincoln above a 3-car garage that's going to be built there anyway. The other thing is, if I don't get the variance, I'll build a 3-car garage. There'll be more traffic over there because I'll be over there all the time getting my stuff in and out. Maybe have friends use it. I let a friend use the garage that's there now this winter. They were driving over there. It wasn't major traffic jam. Adding a 1-bedroom loft above a garage on School Street is not going to be dangerous. Corbeil Lane is not dangerous. When it's snowing, people drive slower. They're not going 30 up the lane. It's common sense. For some reason, I believe that the town is afraid to give me this variance because other people may want to do it. And it might actually solve some of the problems we have with affordable workforce housing. And to not do it is blowing my mind. I'm shocked that that I'm getting so much feedback from the town. You would think that they would want to help a taxpayer put an apartment in Lincoln, but it doesn't seem so.
I would like, oh, Carol, go ahead.
Microphone. I'm gonna keep reminding you.
You just,
We're still pretending to jack.
I don't know.
You're looking out for me. Okay, so here's the problem. In this particular, you're in Village Residential, right? I haven't had a chance to.
Yep.
Okay, Village Residential. And detached accessory apartments are not allowed in Village Residential. So you're asking for a variance.
Correct.
And so one of the criteria is hardship. And I was wondering if you could address the hardship that you have associated with the.
Sure. I would like to stay in Lincoln. I'm downsizing and I need an apartment to be able to stay in Lincoln. I would also say that I believe that the hardship is a town-wide hardship and it's lack of affordable housing, and I'll leave it at that.
since we have staff here, I'd like to just see if they have any questions based on the testimony they've heard. Ron, from the fire department, do you have any questions or concerns that you would add to what you said already?
Yeah, obviously Delia has her own interpretation of what I supplied for the requirements under NFPA 1. It is a requirement that the road to get to the front door of the home needs to be 20 feet wide. Driveways can be 18, 16, or whatever. If she sprinklers the building with a 13D, that gives a greater distance for the water supply, but it doesn't give me a greater distance to access the home. I can't reach 150 feet with my ladder truck to get to the structure. I need to be at the home, and I can't currently get that truck on that road without driving on people's front lawns or whatever. But, you know, it's up to the ZBA, the decision you want to make.
Nate, based upon what we've heard, anything else that is of concern to you?
I disagree that in the water use ordinance. In the water use ordinance, it does state that each unit needs to have its own water service. You can't tie two homes together.
It's
So-
an accessory dwelling. It is not a separate home and the rules are different.
I'm not gonna argue with you. I'm just telling you
I know.
that it's a problem. And I don't want to deal with it.
You don't want to deal with it.
Because I'm dealing with it and it means I don't want to deal with it.
That situation on Main Street is nothing like this situation. That was all done before zoning. People knew about it in town and didn't say anything. It's been like that for years. It's nothing like what's going to happen here.
Chief, would you give us your thoughts?
I think I just, a couple things that we had. I know that thing can hear me. The things that I discussed were minimal. Like I said, the chief indicated based on the fact that we did our record search, we had one motor vehicle crash on that back alley, and I'll call it
Right.
an alley because I started my first career here in 93 to 99. And we used to patrol down those roads. So it's very narrow. The only thing that I would say is it could be a parking issue, especially in the winter. We now, if it is, I don't know what this is going to be designed for, but if there's an issue with cars parked blocking things, we're going to have to deal with that. Minimal on the level of stuff that we have to deal with during the week. But we are talking about possible problems. So I think it's fair just to bring that up.
Thank you. Anybody else in the audience have any comments or questions?
Open to public comment now?
Yes.
It was closed. You have to vote on it.
I had a question or two. Just, I haven't been here for the first couple of things, but just from what I'm hearing today, Ron, so you said you have to be within a certain distance from the door of a place, and I understand you can't get the truck down the road. So just trying to understand, but so what happens to a garage on Henry Lane as opposed to one that has an apartment over it?
It's not a habitable structure.
So it's less important and therefore,
Right.
No.
So the town can.
how does that work? Yeah.
Code is based on habitable structures and structures near habitable structures that could cause harm to life property. So you gotta be able to access the home with the fronts. You gotta be able to get within 50 feet or 100 feet of the home.
Okay,
Accessing from School Street means we gotta go between homes, stretch hoses.
Which is only 60 feet to where the garage is going to be. And you just said 100 feet. So that you can use School Street to access those back garages.
The houses. But built. There needs to be the appropriate road that meets code to what you want to build.
I disagree.
That's long and short of it.
and then my other question was just on
Thank you.
the water, and I haven't seen the part, I didn't read into all the details of the water hookups, but does it matter whether it's a detached versus an attached separate dwelling unit? I mean, I would think I remember on Corbeil, there was like an attached apartment to a house, and there I can see, tying the water together because they're in the same building, whereas if they're a separate building, that would be a different animal altogether.
That's really, dig across Henry Lane. We run a water line stuff.
Right.
You've got a 3/4 inch service feeding the house you got now. Then you gotta tee off that, run two houses on 3/4 inch service.
Mhm.
It's not recommended. I don't, it's problematic.
I wasn't sure if the document differentiated between the types of second dwellings. So, but that's all right. All right, those are my two questions.
Miles, any
No, I'm
questions?
all set.
Delia, do you have anything else you'd like to add?
just the accessory dwelling units law, RSA 67471 says, let's see, water supply and sewer disposal for accessory dwelling unit can be separate systems, but shall not be required to be separate systems. It can attach to the principal and accessory, the principal dwelling.
That's an RSA,
Mhm.
so not specific to what we have in town.
No, that,
I don't know. Just. We have a.
Does
separate
anybody have
one.
a,
Is that what we
oh,
call-
are you done? I'm sorry, Delia. Does anybody have any other questions for Delia?
The only other comment that I would make as the planner is that we do have 4 separate alleys and we have a number of alleys with that are the same situation that she's talking about right now, which the house that is directly on the class 5 road, and then there's a back alley, and then there's some additional land in the back. Some of them have garages, some of them don't. But it's, it's not just this one lot. There are a number of lots that are similarly situated. So.
Thank you. I would open this to public comment. Does anybody have any comments, questions?
We have to vote to open to public. Is that what was going on before?
Delia, anything else?
Again, I know that Carol didn't get the way. It is a public road and it's access to. Well, I hope that's the garage. And done before on Holly Road, several of them.
Thank you. Carol, do you have anything as,
The house that she's talking about that's on the other side, that predated zoning. So that house, is tied into the house in front of it. And I think, is that what you're referring to?
I'm referencing other people that have built apartments over garages in this town. I don't think it's a
Well, there are
Practice.
zones that where it's allowed.
and it's
permitted.
allowed by variance in this zone. That's why I'm here.
anything else, Carol?
Anyway, it's not a special exception in the chart, in the land use schedule. It is it says no, not permitted, which is why you need to get a variance.
You have another comment?
My name is Tracy Brumlick. I live at 51 School Street, direct abutter to Delia. I just want to reiterate, I don't know if everyone remembers the things that we talked about in April. We all got up here and talked about all the things that, why we're against this. Yes, it would increase traffic. Even when she puts a 3-car garage in there, it's still going to increase traffic with 3 more cars on that road. In winter, and Nate does a great job, but that road is extremely narrow. It is not a class 5 road. Sometimes it's 8 feet wide in the middle of winter. You can barely get 1 car down. Even in the summer, when there isn't, it's not a one directional road, people can go any way, but you end up having to pull into someone's driveway to allow the other person to get by. And even with her putting a garage in there, which she's perfectly in her right to do, it's still going to create more traffic. And what else was I going to say? I'm worried about having another home back there with fire. It's gonna, some of the conditions that I don't think were meet was it was gonna increase traffic. It's gonna definitely reduce our property values, having an apartment back there. And it's gonna create overcrowding. So those were different conditions that were on the variance application that I don't think were met.
Are there any other comments?
Bob Abraham, 45 School Street. I'm the property right next to Delia. As Tracy just said, in regards to what we wrote in our letter to the board, she wanted to reiterate that, but also that a couple people were here last meeting mentioning how they bought their properties knowing that there wouldn't be any building in the backyards on Henry Lane. And I think that's a big point right there. Definitely what Tracy said too is that, it'll bring down property values. But at this point, I think with the amount of butters that are against this variance and the information that the board has gotten from the fire department, DPW, police department, I'm just hoping that we can come to a conclusion on this.
Thank you, sir. Any other comments, questions? Yes.
I'm Diana Mortz. I live at 43 School Street, just a couple doors down from where the house is or property is. Anyway, she is well within her right to build a garage there, but I'm unfamiliar with being able to use it as storage for others, maybe family, but would that be, actually, I guess the question is for you, Delia, would that be rental to make income?
You can answer the question. Go ahead.
What will happen with that property is what you're saying is if this doesn't happen, basically. It will be a garage there. I don't know what kind. I let friends use my storage often. So maybe there'll be a car down the lane with going into my garage. But my options at School Street, I may as well bring up. If I can't do this, I'm going to probably have to make School Street the home, a 2-family, and I'd probably put a 2-car garage for the 2 families that are living there. So whether you give me this variance or not is not going to affect the amount of increased traffic because something's going to happen there. That home has 4 bedrooms. If I rent it out to 4 interns or winter workers, the traffic isn't an issue on Henry Lane with 1 additional apartment there. And it's not going to, either way, it's going to be the same amount of increased traffic there or whatever project I do.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments from the board? Oh, I'm sorry. It's not like you're
I don't have to
inconspicuous.
tell you who I am again, right? So it's my understanding that the family that lives there now will have to find another place to live if Delia can't have her attached dwelling. That doesn't make much sense to me. Well, it insinuated. Anyway.
Don't recall that comment, but go ahead.
I don't, it's a safety issue for sure. Because too many people drive too fast down that road. And we were told that, we did put in speed bumps, but we can only have them there for the summer. We move everything out of the way for plowing. But nobody monitors it. If I guess I could take it upon myself every time I start taking pictures of the violators and make a report, a written report, not a phone call to the police station. So, I mean, none of us that live there want it. We're worried about the kids, the pets. We've got people who come, that's their second home. They're there with small, really small children. But it's just, and there are kids on that lane playing all the time. They're visiting friends. They're up and down there, and it's just going to be a disaster. So that's all I have to say for now.
Thank you for your comments.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
I believe this issue was brought up too. I think when the selectmen brought it up, the size of this project too. It's 2-story, over 1,000 square foot. If you start a precedent with this now, where all the backyards are going to be filled with accessory dwellings, throughout the village residential area, is that what the board wants? The whole aesthetics of the town will change, and I think the historical significance of it will also suffer from it too. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public up? Go ahead, Tracy.
It's not over 1,000 square feet. It's 990.
I can't
It's
quite.
990 square feet. It's not over 1,000.
Thank you. Any other public comments? Can I have a motion to close the public hearing?
Motion to close the public hearing.
Thank you. Second. All those in favor? Thank you. Any comments from the board? Would somebody like to make a motion?
Okay, I think you need to go through the criteria
Criteria,
for
granting the variance.
variance. I've given you, in case you didn't bring it, I gave you another copy of Julia's application for her variance. And if you remember, what we do is we basically poll the board. We don't vote on each criteria. We poll the board on each criteria, and then we make a decision at the end. Vote at the end. So I believe, I don't know if you want me to.
Thank you. Yeah, I didn't have it, so thank you.
Okay, so here's her application. And here's the criteria that I'm gonna go through. Right there. I'll just give you that.
Okay.
Hey, Carol, you want to go through the criteria?
Okay, so the first criteria has to do with public interest. And the question is, granting the variance would or would, whoops.
Granting the variance would or would not be contrary to the public interest because, and what Delia has written on her application is to allow an apartment and a 3-car garage stall underneath to replace the existing 1-car garage and add 2-bedroom rental above unit to local housing stock. And then she's got maximum garage size figure at 33 feet by 30 feet wide to fit on lot in setbacks. So she's saying that granting the variance would not be contrary to the public interest. Could poll the board on whether or not you think that this meets the first criteria as not being contrary to public interest.
What you just read was the why it's requested.
Oh, I'm
and not the
sorry.
Section that's
You're right.
on why it would or would not be.
Sorry. Okay, granting the variance would or would not be contrary to public interest because due to the shortage, thank you, Susan, due to the shortage of rental units affordable, adding a new garage with an apartment above would increase housing stock and help the town. Also, other owners on School Street also have units on the Henry Lane side. The workforce something housing option.
Or local.
Oh, okay, or local housing option. Okay, that's what she has for, so do you want to poll the board, Ray? To see whether or not, you feel that it would not be contrary to public interest granting the variance?
Go ahead, Carol, pull the board.
Oh,
I believe that granting the variance would be contrary to the public interest in the fact that everything that we've heard tonight, we've heard no support for this other than from abutters in the DPW and Public Works and the fire department. I don't believe it has really anything to do with the amount of affordable housing in town. There's housing, there's going to be more of it, but it doesn't apply in this case to me.
Susan?
Yes, there's a need for affordable housing, but I don't think that that's the spot, given not just the sentiment of all of the neighbors. I mean, the things that we normally approve have an approval from their neighbors. But on top of it, to have both fire and DPW being against it, I just don't feel that it's the right spot for another apartment.
okay, Ray?
I concur with the comments of the board on item 1. All those in favor, well,
Oh, no, we're just
Oh,
gonna pass, we're
okay.
gonna go to the next criteria. Okay, and hopefully I'll get this right this time.
item 2.
Okay, number 2. Granting the variance would or would not observe the spirit of the ordinance because if the variance was granted, the spirit, this is what she has in her application. If the variance were granted, the spirit of the ordinance would be observed because there is an existing garage falling into disrepair. Replacing and adding an apartment will be in keeping with the garages and storage on that side of Henry Lane. Okay, so polling the board. Do you agree or not agree, or what your comments are, Miles?
I disagree with that, and that it needs a special exception to be there. And by not granting the variance, we're observing the spirit of the ordinance.
Susan?
I think there's a difference between a garage being there and an apartment with a garage being there. And it sounds like she has a different plan that would work well. And meet what DPW are hoping for. So I drove down there today. I didn't see any other apartments on Henry Lane on the backside on the garden lots. I mean, that's what they originally was garden lots where then people put a garage. So I don't know about the history, but certainly there's a plan B that would work better.
Okay, Ray?
For the reasons that we've covered this evening, I agree that it would not be in the public interest and it's not within the spirit of the ordinance. The third one is granting the variance.
Okay, Yeah, the next one, the next one is criteria number 3. Granting the variance would do substantial justice because granting the variance will improve the rental stock by adding an apartment and improve and replace the existing garage. Miles.
I agree that the building probably would not decrease any values at all, but again, not by adding an apartment. If he wants to replace the garage, that's fine. It'll certainly help the values of the property surrounding.
Mhm.
Okay.
Susan?
Were we talking about the values on this one?
No, we're talking about substantial justice.
Substantial
Um,
justice,
I
number
I think
3.
Which question we answered?
If you look at
Um,
the description of the substantial justice that is attached here, let's see. This condition becomes important if other conditions do not provide a clear answer. It encourages the ZBA to step back and take a broad look at the balance of public versus private interest.
Right.
Is there any loss to the individual that's not outweighed by a gain to the general public is an injustice?
It's answering 4, basically.
Okay,
I think that's
right, you're
we
confused.
talked about. To some extent, I agree with her on section 3. Yes, if there were room, that it could be safely put there, according to public officials that know more than I. It would be great to have more rental stock there, but I don't think it's the right spot. I'm not as opposed to this particular part of our request.
Again, we're talking about item 3, and my position is that it hasn't been established that it does a substantial injustice, if you will,
Right.
but there's so many other factors
Right.
that they kind of overwhelm the request. So my position on 3 would be no. Number 4.
Okay, number 4. If the variance were granted, the values of the surrounding properties would not be diminished. And Delia writes that they would be increased as the garage will be bigger. There's more value in an apartment. It increases other neighbors' options for doing the same and setting a valuable precedent to improve the housing availability in Lincoln. Okay, so Miles.
I agree. There would be no diminished property value by replacing the garage within a garage.
Susan?
Okay. This is true. We had an online class just recently about zoning basics, and it was a matter of you can take each case by itself. So the first house on a lake, is one thing, but then suddenly as you get more and more, you can say, no, we're not going to approve these any further because you're changing the character that you were trying to have. And I think that's where the problem comes. Yes, it could improve the value of this property, and putting the apartment above it could do that, but it's going to overcrowd it to the point that in the end, you're going to end up with less value, because if everybody put an apartment over the garage, then it would be very detrimental to the values there.
Next,
Ray?
my position.
Yeah.
I agree with Susan's position here as well. And the next one is the proposed use is or is not a reasonable one because.
Oh, wait,
Unnecessary.
no, the next one is the unnecessary hardship.
Number
Okay.
5.
Number 5, unnecessary hardship. Owing to special conditions of the property that distinguish it from other properties in the area, denial of the variance would result in unnecessary hardship because 1, there is or is not a fair and substantial relationship between the general public purpose of the ordinance provision and the specific application of that provision to the property, because And she has written here, the garage needs replacing. The apartment above will help pay for the needed upgrade. And denying the variance will be a hardship because existing garage will have to remain in disrepair. And 2, the proposed use is or is not a reasonable one because this is always a mouthful, this section here. Other garages in Lincoln would have been allowed variances to have apartments above. Or B, explain how if the criteria in paragraph A are not established, an unnecessary hardship would be deemed to exist if and only if, owing to special conditions of the property that distinguish it from other properties in the area, the property cannot be reasonably used in strict conformance with the ordinance, and a variance is therefore necessary to enable a reasonable use of it. And so she's not choosing the B option, she is choosing the A option. So, any comments, Miles? Or vote, is it a fair and substantial relationship, or is not a fair and substantial relationship between the general public purpose of the ordinance provision and the specific application to this property?
Well, I would have to say I agree with that it's not in the spirit of the ordinance and it doesn't agree to other properties in the area.
Susan?
I don't know that everybody needs to replace their garage at some point. I need to replace my garage on Maple Street, but I don't know that that makes it a specific hardship for this property. It's not significantly different. Yes, other garages in Lincoln have been allowed variances to have apartments above, but not in this location, not on alleys, as far as I know. So, yeah, again, I don't think that it is a cause to let her have the variance.
I would say that you have to take into consideration the size of the road, the access issues, and even the winter access versus summer access and so forth, all of which create certain hardships here that aren't universal in Lincoln. I mean, they do exist in other locations, but I don't think because of those reasons that the uses are reasonable. Carol?
Okay, so the next part is, I guess, to vote on whether to grant or not to grant a variance. And for findings of fact, based on everything else I had going on, I did not really do that. So in the past, when you granted the variance, you've usually adopted most of what the applicant has put on the application. And in this particular case, you're gonna have to design some or come up with some reasons for your decision, whether you vote to grant it or not to grant it. So,
Miles, your position?
Well, my position is based on the inquiries that we've had, that we not grant the variance as applied for. If she wants to come into a different situation and come up with something new, she can come back and apply for that.
okay, so in terms of the findings of fact, so you have expressed that granting the variance would be contrary to the public interest because, and I guess I'd have to read the minutes to get everything that you have just said, but
Do that again?
well, I'm trying to figure out how to do
I
this
see.
since we
I
don't,
would say granting the
unless you wanna-
variance would be contradictory to the public interest because we have no other similar situations that we've granted on Henry Lane with this type of a configuration with an additional auxiliary apartment.
I think I would add that the property really can't be used reasonably in strict conformance with the ordinance, and therefore it's not something that we should be granting.
so you mean the property can be used?
Cannot be used in a reasonable, in strict conformance with the ordinance.
Do you mean the proposal for the property?
Right. Right.
All right, so I guess,
Guess we'll entertain a motion.
based on based on what you have described and, answer to the questions, about the criteria. I don't know if you should continue, so that you can approve those,
Based on what everybody has said, I think
okay, so.
the decision is not to grant the ordinance,
Okay, so
the
now
variance
take a vote.
request.
I vote not to grant the
I second that.
All those in favor?
aye.
Aye. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
I do. Thank you. I do. I do. Yes.
Oh, what is the next?
Okay, the next thing on the agenda is the appeal of Gary Cassignino. Gary is here and the applicant whose decision is being appealed. They're both here. And their representatives, Mr. Carey is here representing them in their position. So that box over there, I've been working hard to try to get the copier to work. I do have that box right there is a portion of the certified record. But I still have probably 1,000 emails to print out. And I assume those need to be part of the certified record because we've been working on this situation for a long time. They came in initially subdivided into two parts, and then we were working with them. So there's a lot of email back and forth between the town engineer, me, town manager, all the different people in our office, as well as, the safety services people. So it's a lot. So it's a work in progress, but I do
I do have all the packets in there. And I'm gonna have to go to Staples after I get everything together. I'm gonna have to go to Staples and have them make copies. Because I don't have the capability of making copies of some of that stuff here in the office. So I'm just letting you know. So anyway, pardon? Right, and Susan is gonna recuse herself. She's married to a planning board member. And so she's recusing herself. And I was still hoping John would show up, but if he's had 7 calls and he has nobody driving, I don't think we're gonna see him. So
How about Jack?
Jack is supposed to come.
I understood he was gonna try to come.
He's told you he
We
was
don't
gonna
have a-
try to come.
We don't have a full board then.
Well, we have, you have 3. Ugh. Anyway. Does anybody have Jack on speed dial?
I don't.
Okay, I'm gonna go in the other room. See if I can, I don't know that I have a cell phone. I'll see.
Right through the door.
Excuse me.
Susan, this must be difficult being married to a planning board member now. Oh,
Not only I know that I have
of course.
opinion.
Yeah. No, I understand. I haven't seen him around much. Is he busy? Yeah. I usually catch him always at the dump. That's where we run into each other. But it works. I know. I always yell at him. Supposed to leave stuff, Joe. Oh, yeah, those stay here, big guys. Yeah. Man.
Okay, so they have a right to have a
Full board.
ask for a full board according to rules of procedure.
They want to do.
So let's ask them.
Ask them.
Here. I called Jack. And he is not picking up. So I don't know what that means. He did know that he was not going to be part of the first hearing. And he had told me that he was gonna make it for the second hearing, but he apparently has suggested to Ray that, he might not make it, so. Anyway, I've left a message on his cell phone. You do have, the right to have a full board under the rules of procedure. Or you can agree to have a smaller than full board. So we have John, who is rescuing people in their cars, and we have Jack, who was expected but is not here. Yeah, you have to use that.
What I don't know is what the rules are. Maybe Mr. Johnson can, or you can fill me in on this. I don't know what the rules are regarding what's needed for a vote. If there are only 3 members present, I understand that 3 members is the minimum that can do a hearing, but is a majority vote 2-1 still enough to carry whatever the issue is?
It would take, by statute, it requires 3 votes, regardless of how many are here. It requires 3 votes to grant the relief you're requesting. So it would require a unanimous vote.
Yeah, I had a feeling that's what it was, which is a very odd rule. I'd love to do this now to get it done, but and I think it would be a unanimous vote. But I suppose the more prudent thing to do would be to have a full board.
I feel like crying.
I know. Don't,
There's no crying in zoning.
no, there's
No crying in zoning.
Well, give me 1 minute to, don't cry yet.
No, I didn't, I mean, I just like,
Or maybe you'll avoid crying.
well, I mean, I can reschedule it. I can't do it for next week, but the week after. I wouldn't have to redo notices because I've already sent notices to 71, places and, certified mail, return receipt and all that. And, let me go get my calendar a minute.
Actually, hold up. I changed my mind. I'd like to just go forward. I understand it's up to me is what I took a look at the zoning rules. So you're telling, and that's what you indicated previously, that I have the right as the appellant to either proceed with a panel of 3 or not. And I've reconsidered. I've got a busy schedule coming up. I feel our case is clear and I'd like to go forward now, if that's okay.
Okay with you guys?
Yeah, it's fine.
Okay.
I do have some materials I'm going to submit when the hearing gets going as well to make things easier for you.
Hands my here for you, and then you can sit here and. Soft spoken, so. I don't want any more having to type red inaudible in the minute. Do you have anything you want to pass out or?
Great. In a minute, I will. Thanks.
Everybody's coming in. Over there. Everybody go outside there.
Yeah, I think so. Boy, the Carl gets back with their material.
It's-
I got everybody. Yeah, you- Okay, I think I have.
I think I have everybody.
And then once again, we have a board of three. And you have a right to more, but you've had that discussion.
Thank you.
Okay, with an administrative appeal, I don't think I've done one before, so I think I'm gonna ask, for, Attorney, Johnston, if he can be the guiding light for the ZBA here.
Okay. And there's nothing terribly complicated about it. I would follow the same hearing procedure that you have with a request for a special exception or a variance. You have the appellant present his case and then give the applicants an opportunity to respond. Then allow the public to speak, again, just as you would for any other kind of hearing. Then close the public hearing and the board would deliberate and make a decision.
That said, the appellant can make his, tell us what his position is.
Thank you. Let me, for the record, introduce myself. My name is Gary Casangino. That's Casinghino. And my wife and I reside at 9 Valley View Lane in Lincoln. We've owned the property for 17 years and we've been there full time for quite a while now. We appreciate the opportunity to come before you with this appeal of a decision of the planning board, which approved a subdivision, or two subdivisions actually in our immediate neighborhood. Hopefully you've had an opportunity to review some of the materials that have been submitted. And it's probably an appropriate evening for this hearing after the deluge of rain that we've had this afternoon, because we're dealing with issues of drainage systems and stormwater management in this appeal. So it's quite timely. More specifically, the issue for the zoning board of adjustment here today is whether drainage systems and specifically the drainage structures, which consist of those drainage systems, which are required by the stormwater management ordinance and by the Department of Environmental Services wetlands regulations, whether those drainage systems can be counted as part of the square footage for minimum lot size requirements for a lot, a residential lot in the town of Lincoln. My neighbor, Frank Prosciutto, who's on Zoom, I believe, who's available, who has attended all of the meetings relating to this matter and who has assisted me with this appeal. He and I, we feel very strongly that The evidence will establish at this hearing that the ordinance does not allow drainage systems to be counted as part of the minimum square footage for a minimum lot size. It's not usable space. And we think that when you review and consider all of the evidence that we have to present here and consider the terms of the zoning ordinance or the land use plan ordinance, you'll agree that drainage systems are part of are not usable space, and they are specifically excluded as usable space from lot coverage requirements and minimum lot size requirements in the town of Lincoln. Now, I do have, and you probably already have these, but if it's okay, I have what I will refer to as the condensed appeal package. And so this package, I won't be going through all of it, but this is a much shorter version of the appeal package that was submitted for these two appeals. And you'll notice that the pages have page numbers at the bottom and the lower right. And it starts, for example, with page 19, and the last page is page 59. So the page numbers come from the other package, and there aren't really pages missing. We just picked the more important pages to provide with you. And some of these I'm going to review with you now. So I did want to note that the planning board conducted, very lengthy hearings regarding this matter. Some were 5 hours, beginning 6 p.m., going to 11 p.m. And as with you, they are volunteers. I recognize that. We recognize this. So we thank you for being here. I thank them for what they've done. I think they do a good job. I think they just made a mistake here, and I think that will be evident through this appeal. Why don't we start by taking a look at the last page of this packet that I just submitted, which is page 59 in the lower right corner. If you turn it sideways, it's one of the lots at issue. So starting, first in the lower right-hand corner, you can see this whole Lincoln Valley Development subdivision, which is one of the two subdivisions at issue here on Mansion Hill. But called out in larger print is lot 24. So if you could, and this is one of the lots on which we feel that the drainage structures were improperly included as part of the minimum square footage. So if we could start by just looking at the information in the yellow box, it says lot 24. The whole lot itself is quite substantial. It's 45,000 square feet. But then beneath there, it says net lot area, 22,582 square feet. And it says wetland area, 22,479. So as they needed to, the developer excluded the wetlands from the usable space. There's no doubt that that's required. What they did not do is they did not also exclude the drainage structures. So what you have here after excluding the wetlands is a 22,582 square foot lot. The minimum lot size, as you're aware, for a duplex, this is a duplex that's proposed on this lot, is 22,500 square feet. It'd be 15,000 square feet if it was a single family home, but we're dealing with a duplex where you have 22,500 square feet. So this is it's only 82 square feet more than the minimum after excluding the wetlands. And by the way, the wetlands are the dots on this diagram. You're probably aware of that, but all the dotted areas are wetlands. This is a very wet area. It's right near a perennial stream. So about half of this lot is wetland. The areas of the lot that have the duplex on it and a blue area on it, that's part of the 22,582 square feet. But the blue area, as you can see, is a drainage system. It's labeled as above ground stormwater management area. That is an infiltration basin. An infiltration basin is this term that's defined by the New Hampshire Wetlands Board regulations. It's a principal drainage structure for this entire development. This whole development, the two subdivisions together, have 6 principal drainage structures. They have 2 infiltration basins, which are large, they're substantial, and they have 4 rain gardens. So we have a key drainage system, a key drainage structure located on this lot. And the usable space of 22,582 square feet on the lot consists of 4 non-contiguous areas. The largest one is the one that has the duplex and the drainage system on it. Then in the top part, you see some land that's not dotted. That's some on either side of the dots. In the lower left-hand corner, there's also some. So what you have here is you have a drainage structure, the infiltration basin, that's larger than the duplex on the lot. The duplex is, the foundation footprint is 30 by 50. It's 1,500 square feet footprint for both sides of the duplex. So you can see from the blue area, it's considerably more than the size of the duplex. So you've got an infiltration basin that's considerably more than 1,500 square feet that's being counted as part of the 22,582 square feet minimum lot size. So if that's not allowed, and we'll point to the ordinance in a bit to show you where it's clearly not allowed under the ordinance, this lot does not meet the minimum lot size requirements of the town of Lincoln. Now, back last August of 2023, the planning board was having a series of meetings, and I've read the minutes of some of those meetings, and in those meetings in July and August, in that time frame, the planning board was trying to just review the land use plan ordinance generally, and they were trying to see if things should be amended. They were just reviewing the terms of the ordinance, and they were discussing whether or not there needed to be amendments. And in the course of that meeting, one of those meetings, the issue of drainage systems came up. Now, if we could turn for a minute to here we go. Page 47 in the packet. It's just 3 from the back, I believe. Or no, it's more like, sorry, it's like about 5 from the back. Page 47 is a portion of the minutes from the August 23, 2023 meeting of the planning board. And highlighted there is the succinct conclusion of the planning board that says the planning board discusses stormwater systems and that stormwater systems should not be considered usable space or be part of the calculation for lot coverage. And above that, it indicates that the planner explained that there's a definition of usable space in the ordinance. The attorney, Jason Dennis, was satisfied with the definition. It would make sense to move it up front to the definition section instead of hiding it in the special exception section. And they were talking about where to put it. Well, so as you can see here, at least in August of 2023, the planning board itself felt that stormwater protection systems were not considered usable space. Yet they went ahead and mistakenly approved a subdivision plan which counted the stormwater system as part of the usable space. So to refer you to the section that they were talking about, the section of the zoning ordinance at issue where it is specifically excluded from usable space is at page 43. It's about 8 or 10 pages in roughly. It's an excerpt from Article 8 of the Land Use Plan Ordinance. And it appears under Board of Adjustment. And it appears in the section regarding special exceptions. And if you go down to, everybody's with me, subparagraph 2I, adequate usable space. It has a definition for adequate usable space. You're with me? On page 43, it says, the definition of usable space is any portion of a lot or structure which is designed or can be used to support development. And then it says what is excluded from usable space. B, the definition of usable space excludes, number 1 is about flood hazard areas. Number 2 is about protected shorelands. Number 3 is wetland, land covered by wetlands, water bodies, watersheds, and drainage systems, as defined by the New Hampshire Wetland Board's rules. So here you have it right here in Article 8 that usable space excludes drainage systems. And that is what was.
Excuse me, I,
Yes.
where's Article 8? Show me. Oh, I got Article 8. What part?
Yes,
It's
the
43.
part in yellow, do you have some in yellow there? I'm sorry, it should be page 43.
Page 43.
Article 8 is just top. That's Article 8.
Okay,
So then he's looking, he's directing you to this.
thank you.
Okay, great. So yeah, we have a definition of usable space that's not highlighted in yellow. And then we have under B, what's excluded from usable space. And B1 was special flood hazards. B2 is protected shorelands. B3 is land covered by wetlands, water bodies, watersheds, and drainage systems. So that is a definition of the ordinance that says usable space does not include drainage systems. And that is why it can't be counted as part of the minimum square footage. Now, what I would note is that it is odd that this definition of usable space appears in the section of the land use plan ordinance about the Board of Adjustment and regarding special exceptions. And I suspect that an argument may be made by the developers that this doesn't apply because it only applies to special exception situations. But that is not the case, as we know, because for several reasons. For one thing, as we just indicated, back in August of 2023, the planning board minutes indicated that, as we were looking at a moment ago,
47.
47, thank you. Sorry. Yes, the planning board discussed stormwater systems, and the stormwater system should not be considered usable space or part of the calculation for lot coverage. So the planner had indicated that the attorney was satisfied with the definition, and they were talking about moving it to a different section. But the indication was that it applied. It was just in an odd area. So what I have is I have a little bit of an audio for you. It's just 4 minutes. And I have a transcript of this section of the planning board meeting in August of 2023. It won't be very lengthy, but you can hear you can hear the discussion that took place at that time.
You're a little late.
What's for lunch?
Ice cream sundaes.
Okay, well, we're proceeding without you, so. Okay. All right, well, we're gonna continue. We'll talk to you later, all right? Thank you for calling. All right.
That check.
Bad boy, Jack.
So, what I have is I have the audio, but because the audio is a little hard to hear, the transcript will let you read along with it. And here's the discussion about this.
You do believe in the relationship, one thing and other challenges to develop. Okay, you're one. Right now, I'm reading from the agenda. Okay, so,
Goodbye.
so we already had a definition, so just so you know, we already had a definition, and Jason felt that the court would support us using it the way it is in the land use plan, but would be better if it were elsewhere. Or be.
the use of the space, and add 63 and 3. This is just copy from another file.
Are coming from a different section of the ordinance already. And then, in terms of where to put it, in a more obvious place, so that anybody who is developing can find it. That's when you turn to page 35, 36. And that just comes right from the same place that we got the definition.
So.
It just includes all the other elements that you're supposed to, that the planning board is supposed to review in granting either subdivision or site plan review approval. Which you already have in the ordinance, but you have it in a weird place, you have it in the special exception.
So my question would be under number 3. I think everybody knows the water line, watershed, drainage system. As defined by the New York Board, does that include stormwater protection systems? Because stormwater protection systems are not using space. I mean, if you take a look at the subsurface systems that they're putting in, depending on whether it's a hotel or whatever it is, those can be pretty big. A lot of money around, right? You can't build on top, so it might be space. You shouldn't build on top. It shouldn't be. You can't build. Where you want it, I think they want to put the way to build. Structurally, you can, oh yeah. If you put 3 feet, I'm telling you, put it up. Put 3 feet of fill over top of it, and put a hard surface on top of it, you can build over top of it. So if they have inspection for it, the back, you can do that, but this would just preclude somebody from considering stormwater protection areas as usable space. To me, that should be set aside. We had one up to Ramshorn 3 years ago, built over the stream for the brook. You get there, you have to a lot of paperwork, DES to do it. And now we're. And would usable space be considered as part of the aggregate when you're figuring out?
No. No, that's the whole,
Right.
that's the way your ordinance is written right now. You can find it in its ridiculous places.
I mean, it's just for clarity. Stormwater protection areas should not be considered part of an aggregate that someone uses for law coverage.
So what we have there is a few things. Just a few points I would highlight about what was brought up at that meeting. We know that the planner indicated that the town attorney felt that the court would support using it the way it is in the land use planning ordinance. So in other words, the opinion of council evidently was that even though it's in the special exception section, it applies to subdivisions generally. Doesn't matter that it's there. It would just be more convenient if it was put somewhere else. But this is already binding. This is what you're already supposed to follow. It said these are the elements that the planning board is supposed to review now when granting a subdivision, which you already have. You just have it in a weird place. Member Bowden said stormwater protection systems are not usable space. He said somebody could try to build on top of them. And he specifically asked whether or not usable space should be considered as part of an aggregate, like for the minimum lot size requirement. And the consensus was it's not usable space. So it's odd that we have to be here on an appeal where the planning board itself had previously considered this issue and had specifically decided that it's not usable space. And if there was any debate about whether or not this section of the ordinance applied or not, they said it does apply. Town council so advised, planner indicated, planning board itself, everybody was in agreement that this is what has to be followed in the town of Lincoln. Yet in this case, they did not apply it. They allowed the drainage systems to be part of the usable space and meet the minimum lot size requirement. They had concerns, and again, as I indicated previously, I understand that they have a hard job. The ordinance is long. There's a lot of territory to cover. There are many sections. I wouldn't want to have the task of trying to enforce and oversee that law. But at least one of the members had the right instincts, even though apparently I don't think he was aware of that provision of the ordinance at the time he raised this concern. There was a meeting in March of 2014 on this particular application. And there's a short paragraph, which I quoted from that meeting on page 48. If you'd be kind enough to take a look at page 48 for me for a minute. And what this is it's a question of the developers that was raised by Mr. Robinson, one of the planning board members, with regard to lot 24, the lot we started out by looking at, which had the infiltration basin on the lot. So I'll just read his question to you if I may, and it's right in front of you as well. Mr. Robbins says to developers, just a couple of things I can't think myself through. Let's start with lot 24, where you have a duplex. The calculation of usable space for that particular lot is 4 non-contiguous areas that surround a single area of wetlands. So you are calculating the usable space by taking the parts of the lot that are outside of the wetland area. And with that, it meets the criteria. But of those 4 separate areas, only one is large enough to actually do anything with as far as construction, and there's a duplex on it. But nearly half of that one, quote, usable space is taken up by a drainage structure. And I guess I'm just questioning the counting of what's right now, not flat, but undisturbed usable space, definitely usable space right now. But once you dig that up and put rocks and drainage and dump water into that, should the board still consider that usable space? I need to be talked into that. So this is the lot that we were looking at earlier. And Mr. Robinson's question was spot on. His gut instincts told him that this doesn't look right. How can you count that drainage system as part of the usable space? And apparently at the time, he wasn't aware of the ordinance provision, but yet he intuitively knew that it wasn't right. And yet the subdivision ended up getting approved with two lots. The one we were just looking at, lot 24, which has a drainage system that takes up about half of the square footage, and clearly is way below the minimum square footage after excluding the drainage system. And you just looked at Article 8 of the ordinance, which said you have to exclude wetlands, you have to exclude protected shorelands, you have to include watersheds, you have to exclude wetlands, and drainage systems have to be excluded just like the wetlands were excluded, but they weren't excluded here. Now, if we may just go back to another lot, if I could show you the other lot that we know, where we know there's an issue like this. It is the second page from the back of the package. Try not to go on too long. So that's page 58. It's there's only two areas here that I need to focus on. And on this page 58, you have 3 duplexes that are proposed or were approved actually for the top of Valley View Lane. And it's lot 6 that I'd like to talk about in particular, which is on the left side of the diagram there. And as you can see from the information in the yellow square, lot 6 is 23,247 square feet. So it's 747 square feet more than the minimum. And that one doesn't have any wetlands on it, so you don't have to go to any other net square footage. It's 23,247 square feet. It's 747 more than the minimum. That's before excluding the drainage systems that should have been excluded. So as you can see, there are 2 drainage systems proposed for this lot. At the top, there's a proposed rain garden. And then there's part of a rain garden near the driveway. And then the other part is on the next lot. So this duplex is also 50 by 30 or 1,500 square feet footprint. And you can see that the rain garden at the top, even though they didn't provide exact dimensions of the rain gardens, to get that is probably about 1,500 square feet, about the same size as the duplex. And then you add in the additional rain garden at the bottom, it's going to be well over 747 square feet. So if you exclude the drainage systems, the rain garden at the top, part of the rain garden at the bottom, it's clearly under the minimum lot size of 22,500 square feet. While we're looking at this diagram, it's also worth noting that it's worth taking a look at the configuration of these lots overall. And as you, at the top of the diagram extending out to the right, there are what I'll refer to as slivers of land, which are connected to lots 6 and 7, and they go way over to the east or to the right. And those slivers are part of the minimum, part of the land that's being included to meet minimum lot size requirements, but it's not even in the same neighborhood as the structure itself. It's back behind somebody else's backyard. So it's a really odd configuration as it is. These duplexes are really squeezed in as it is. And you can see how close they come to the setback requirements, because those dotted lines within the boundary lines, you probably realize, are the 15-foot side yard and front yard and backyard. So the duplexes are pushed right up against the minimum lot sizes, and it's not a good setup as it is. And on top of that, they're proposing to put the rain gardens on the lots and count that as part of the square footage instead of backing it out like they had to with the wetlands and like they should have with the rain gardens. Now, I'm sure that the engineers can come up with a variety of solutions to this if the approval is to be reversed. It isn't really that complicated to do some of them. One very simple one, for example, would be to make these 3 lots 2 lots. They could keep the perimeter of the 3 lots as it is. And they could just divide it into 2 lots instead of 3 lots. And there would be enough room for the drainage systems, no problem. They could do something even easier with lot 24 in the back. They could just eliminate one of the boundary lines and make it part of the parcel next to it, make it one of the adjacent parcels. So they would just have 2 fewer lots, and that would be an easy solution to this problem. And although we don't have all the dimensions of all the drainage structures in the whole developments, these may be the only 2 areas where it doesn't meet the requirements. It's the 2 that we are highlighting, the 2 that we feel are clearly deficient, and the 2 for which this board should reverse and overturn the approval. Now, again, I think the argument that you may hear that is that Article 8 doesn't apply because it's in the special exception section. And you may also hear that the town voters did not approve moving the definition to another section, which is correct. But if you could, I'd like to refer you to an agenda that's in the materials. It is at page 50 to 51. So if you have page 50 and if you look at the yellow highlighting, what this is, first of all, it's an excerpt from the agenda of a planning board meeting for February 28th, 2024. So this is shortly before the town meeting in March. And what you have there under what's called Article 4 explanation, that's the same language verbatim as went on the town meeting warrant that went before the voters. So it says the planning board was proposing duplicating the definition of usable space. I'm skipping some of the words and adding it to the front section of the ordinance where the other definitions are located, most of the other ones. It recommended duplicating the text. And then if you move on to the next paragraph, it said that the reason for this is that it will be easier to find and access as recommended by the town attorney. It says, there is no change in what is required. The standards will be easier to find and access. Now, this is very important. So, although the town voters did not approve moving the definitions, the town voters were told that there's no change in what is being required. So the requirements that were already in effect remain in effect. So the failure of the voters to move the definitions is no indication that the voters did not want to enforce the usable space requirements because they were told that they're already there. And then at the bottom of page 50 and 51, it says this move makes the standards easier to find within the 100-page document recommended by town attorney. So clearly, the town's voters' failure to move the definitions from one section to another did not mean that the town voters disapproved of those provisions. There's one final point I'd like to make, and just one more reference in my last handout, if you would, on that point is here. And this will be easy because it's just one sentence I want to refer to. So what we've just submitted is an excerpt from the minutes of the planning board meeting of April 10, 2024. Now, this was after the town meeting, right? After the town meeting in March, when the voters didn't move the definition. They left the usable space criteria in Article 8 where they were. And the planning board, and this is about this particular subdivision, planning board was considering the subdivision. And the planning board was reviewing the criteria. And one of the issues they addressed was, as it says on page 9, usable space, I circled the section. Does the planning board wish to apply the usable space exclusions to the project? The answer was yes. So they said they were going to apply the usable space exclusions, which includes drainage systems, but they didn't do it. It's really kind of unbelievable. So I could explain why this all happened. There's more background. I don't want to take a lot of time. A lot of it has to do with steep slopes. There were concerns. I'm not going to get into a lot of it because what we have here is crystal clear. I think we've brought up probably at least 3 separate sections where not only was it clear that drainage systems are in the ordinance and are not to be counted as usable space, but that the planning board acknowledged that. The planning board thought that it was sound. They wanted to keep it that way. They didn't want it to be part of usable space. They didn't want people building on it. They felt that it should be excluded. And they reiterated that, yet they let it go by on these 2 particular lots. Then the final part of my argument here is, even if for some reason these criteria did not apply to the subdivision because they're in Article 8 regarding the zoning board and regarding special exceptions, there is yet another section of the zoning ordinance which also requires that these be excluded from minimum lot size requirements, which is not in the section regarding the zoning board and regarding special exceptions. And that is in Article 6. And that is at page 42 of the packet, which is just about, I don't know, maybe 10 pages in or so. So if you could turn to page 42 for me for a minute. So page 42 is part of Article 6 of the Land Use Plan Ordinance. And paragraph 3 is about lot and lot coverage requirements and standards. And subparagraph A says the area of any year-round stream or water body shall not be included in determining compliance with the minimum lot size under the section. So we're good with that. Yeah, when we looked at lot 24, we saw that they took out the wetlands to arrive at net usable space, minimum lot size requirements. But then if you go on and you see E, lot coverage, it says lot coverage requirements and standards may be impacted by stormwater management ordinance. Lot shall comply with the requirements of the stormwater management ordinance. So that was added in 2015 when the town adopted its stormwater management ordinance. And the stormwater management ordinance is, as I'm sure you all are aware, an important, very important document. The stormwater management ordinance requires a lot of things. There was a 235 drainage report plan, 235 page drainage plan that they developed for these subdivisions. There were these infiltration basins designed, rain gardens designed. The whole point of the stormwater management ordinance, as you're probably aware, is that when a new subdivision comes in, the flow of water off of the land should not increase as compared to what it was before the development. It's a great concept. It just came into effect in 2015. It follows the New Hampshire Stormwater Manual, and it requires that. So they had water scientists, they had soil scientists, they had engineers who came forward and proved that this development would not increase the water flow from stormwater. And they did so with these drainage structures, the rain gardens and the infiltration basins. But these systems were so significant that when stormwater management ordinance was adopted in 2015, the town also amended the land use plan ordinance to add that subparagraph that we were just looking at, subparagraph E, that says, not only do you have to exclude wetlands like we set up above in subparagraph A, but stormwater management systems are going to impact lot size requirements as well. So even if for some reason Article 8 didn't apply because it's in the zoning board section under special exceptions, Article 6 requires the same thing. It says you have to leave the drainage systems for stormwater management out of the minimum square footage requirement. And in this case, it's 4 rain gardens and 2 big infiltration basins. In other developments, it may be even larger things like in-ground basins, stormwater ponds, detention basins, bioretention systems, gravel wetlands. Like Mr. Robinson said, what happens once you go ahead and throw in all that as rocks and water in there? Can we count that as usable space? No. The ordinance says in 2 different places, in Article 8 and in Article 6, you can't include those drainage systems as part of the usable space. And that's required both by the stormwater management ordinance, by DES, and by the land use plan ordinance in general. So we think that those 2 provisions of the land use plan ordinance should be read consistently with each other. Article 8 parallels Article 6. It's not that hard to leave out the drainage systems from the square footage. You just have to have a bigger lot. If you've got a 2,000 square foot drainage system and you need 22,500 square feet, you just have to have a lot that's 24,500 square feet. You have to have a bigger lot because you got to leave out the land, exclude the land with the drainage systems, just like you did with wetlands, or just like they did with wetlands. So I appreciate your time. I've gone on quite a length, and I appreciate you hearing out the appeal. And if there are any questions, I'd be happy to answer them, or I'd also be happy to let you proceed to somebody else if you'd like.
Thank you, sir. Anybody on the board have a question? Well, at least not at this point. Okay.
Thank you very much.
Oh, did you?
No,
Oh,
no,
I'm sorry.
but I want to get public. Make a motion to open it to public. Yeah, I'd like to make a motion to open it to public comment, please.
I'll
Don't
try
they
to
respond first before we open public comment?
I think,
Yeah, they have to have their response time before we open public
okay.
comment.
Hey.
Sorry.
You wouldn't mind identifying yourself to talk because in the corner, you can do this with that.
Certainly. Good evening. Mr. Chair, members of the board, my name is Bob Carey, and I represent Coolidge Ridge and Lincoln Valley Development. Their principals, Kyle McManus and Ethan Conley, are also in the audience, and with me here is our engineer, Keith Curran. I want to frame this with the broader view, because you've been asked to make a ruling based on what was proposed, what Mr. Casagnino represented people thought, they felt. He's not asked you to make a ruling on what the actual law is. And about half an hour, 45 minutes into his presentation, he admitted that none of the proposed changes to the ordinance were ever implemented. The voters did not accept them, did not vote for them. And he speculated as to why they may not have done that. But we can't have that. You can't have laws that are proposed but not adopted and say, well, we're going to enforce those because people really thought that's what we were going to do. You have to have one set of rules for everybody to follow. And the democratic process is, if you want to change them, change them. And they were not changed here. And so what we have to do is follow the ordinance as it's written. Not as people wanted it to be or as it was proposed, but as it is written, because that's how law, you have to know what the rules are that you're playing by in anything, whether it's basketball, hockey, zoning, land use. The rules are the rules. That's how you know what side to stay on. I'll address the sort of what I'll call the legal arguments first, and then I have Mr. Curran with me too, because he has looked at a way to possibly remedy this situation and render it moot, because there might be a way to recalibrate some of the lots in a way that removes the drainage system from the calculations, and with those, especially lot 6 and lot 24. And Mr. Curran will talk a little bit about that. That's something that has to be submitted to Ray Korber for technical review, and it has been just recently. Mr. Casagnino talks about 2 sections of the land use ordinance, section 6B4. And if you have that in front of you, page 24 of his packet, he says Article 6, section B4A and E require that both wetlands and drainage systems, which are required by the Stormwater Management Ordinance, shall not be included in the determining compliance with the minimum lot size requirement under the LPO. Those are not the words of the ordinance. Those are not the words of the ordinance. If you look at page 42 of his packet, which is also on page 33 of the land use ordinance, his words are not the same. He's misconstrued the statute. Article 6, section B, 3A says the area of any year-round stream or water body shall not be included in determining compliance with minimum lot size under this section. It's true. And the wetlands were removed and a stream was removed from the calculation. And section E, also on page 33 of the ordinance, for section 6B, section B, says the lot coverage requirements and standards may be impacted by a stormwater management ordinance. That's not what Mr. Casagnino put in his appeal. He's misstated what the actual ordinance is. The words of the ordinance are not what he says they are. They don't say that both wetlands and drainage systems shall not be included. They don't. The second argument he makes too is also something that is answered by the ordinance and by the words of the ordinance as they are and as they exist and as they existed when the planning board approved this application. This is from Article 8, section A2. And this talks about page page 43 of the Mr. Castellino's submission, and also page 94 of the land use ordinance. Mr. Castellino is correct. He had to concede this. This is a special exception requirement. And he offered lots of reasons why it may be different and why it might not be different and why it should be the same. What the law is and the rules are, this is in a different section and it applies a different standard for special exceptions. The planning board doesn't rule in special exceptions. This board does. And this was not a special exception application. It's not a variance application. There are different standards for variances, as we've heard tonight. And town boards, in their wisdom, put different standards for different requirements. Special exception is not the same as a permitted use. And this was a permitted use, permitted subdivision, residential subdivision. It didn't have to go through the special exception criteria. Didn't have to go through the variance criteria. And so this cannot be applied to a subdivision application that's a permitted use. So Mr. Castellino, and he also makes an argument saying they have to be read consistently. They don't. You don't have to read variance definitions consistently with the other parts of a land use ordinance. You don't have to read the special exception specific criteria as the same with another criteria. They're different for a reason. They're divided differently. They're different articles of the land use ordinance. The ordinance was not changed. And this was a long process. The planning board had spent an awful lot of time, sacrificed an awful lot of time and energy to get this right. They had the town lawyer at every meeting. They had the town engineer at every meeting. He went through, I believe, 3 technical reviews, copious reports, detailed to a level of detail I've not seen before. And this planning board advised by the town lawyer about what the ordinance meant and how to follow it. Advised by an engineer who did not say, this is how you read the ordinance, you read it the way it was proposed, but not the way it exists. Those 2 professionals gave the planning board good advice, and they followed that advice. They applied the ordinance the way it's written and the way it has to be applied as it's written. And it's really that simple. You look at the words of the ordinance, the words on the page, the law that exists, and the rules that we were all playing by at the time that this was approved. So for those reasons, I believe you should reject this appeal. And I will also let Mr. Curran, the engineer, explain sort of something that would render the appeal moot, the argument moot, based on some engineering calculations or adjustments that can be made.
Thank you, Bob. I appreciate it. So I actually have a plan that I'll share on my easel, but basically it's just making some minor lot adjustments. So if you recalculate with taking out the stormwater management features, which include the infiltration basins and also the rain gardens, we meet the requirements on the 2 lots that, Gary brought up, lot 6 and lot 24. So I shared this again with Ray Corber, the town engineer, just to get his feeling feedback on it. He said that it basically in principle and idea makes sense, and that we still have to, as part of the conditions of the planning board approval, address his last technical review, which is minor. At the same time, he would then confirm or agree with, review our calculations if we wanted to make this point mute. So I'm just going to share that plan with you that I have shared with Ray Corber already. Which two plans, again, there's two different subdivisions, as I mentioned, the upper portion and the lower portion. So that lot 6 is on the upper portion, the lot 24 is on the lower portion, so again, 2 pages. You won't be able to see it fine, it's colored up. Again, these are the plans that have been submitted and approved by the plan board. What we're showing here is red, is stormwater management. So again, here, this is the rain garden that's on lot 6. There's also 2 rain gardens that split between lot 6 and 7, and 7 and 8. So simply by adding this to lot 6, right, and taking it from lot 5, even with removing just half of the rain garden, this rain garden, of course, not counting the wetlands, you're able to meet the requirement of the minimum 20,500 square feet. So it's really just small lot line adjustment. Doesn't have any impact on the design. Right. So that would take care of lot 6. The other lot, which was mentioned, is lot 24. With a similar situation. We again, this is the implication basin, which is about over 4,000 square feet on lot 24. Simply by.
Could you tell me which page of that one?
They're not in there, Ray.
Oh, it's
They're
not
not
in
in
here.
there.
But it's in the same, it's on the same, the last 2 pages, that packet. That had so you just put them from the plan. So again, we're talking a lot.
I thought you said
the last page. Right, lot 24,
But this
last
vision,
page.
this particular map is not part of Mr. Castellino's materials. This is the proposed lot line adjustment.
For example, this was given application package to be going to lot 24. So again, if we were to remove the stormwater management area from that lot 24, again, would be under the requirement of 20,500 square feet. However, simply by taking the area from lot 5 and put on lot 24, you offset that. So then it's all upland. So again, you would have, if by adjusting that lot line, right, you would have the requirement of 22,500 square feet. You may ask again, we check these, you remove that from lot 25, lot 25 still conforming, right? Because obviously there's wetlands in that, it would still meet the minimum requirement of the 22,500 square feet. That's similar situation on the other lot. So by taking, moving the lot lines and adjusting them, we're not making the other lot non-conform. They still meet the requirements of the bylaw. So again, just by simply moving a couple of lot lines, we make this appeal. I don't know if you had any questions on that. Again, it has no impact on the town whatsoever. So the idea would be that right forward, the town engineer would review these adjustments, check our calculations, make sure they're conforming. You do it at the same time that, one of the conditions of the planning board approval was that we have to try the last 2 technical comments, you do it at the same time. So again, it only has to go back to Ray as a technical review. Then that needs to go back to the planning board if we were to make these lot line adjustments. That's it, unless you have any questions.
You're saying that those, the red and the green adjustments. Bring
Yeah, the
everything.
red is kind of like a subtraction, right? If you were to subtract out the stormwater management area, the green is like an addition back to that lot. So therefore, it more than offsets the reduction of the stormwater management area. You move from that lot area.
Can you give us, it doesn't have to be tonight, but a memo that puts that on record so that we could add it to the.
And can you email me those, and then you'll have to put it in.
Yes, I can do a memo and then.
Yeah, it's gonna be attached.
And just for the record, I have a small schematic of it. But I'll have her email it to the call.
Well, what copy? I can do more copies.
Sure, well, I'd like to for an email an official version, but if
If you have to read on that, we have a PDF version, you can see the areas, for example, like the areas that are being
let's
practiced.
do that then.
And then the area, it's very difficult to read on the website. Yeah.
And what page number is that?
So what these are, is basically it's the full plan for the planning board, with us just adjusting along that color. For So this sheet right here is again sheet 302. The other one is 303 of the approved site plan set. Okay.
I think, you have. Okay, we didn't print it out. I don't know if there are two pages. It was the April, or when you had it for the April 24th hearing.
Yep.
Ray sent me this because I think it's stale there. So is this.
I believe that's the plan and set that we had at the last hearing where we were approved.
So they each have. So they
So if you go to page 302. Again, these are the lot lines as approved by the planning board. So again, to make the appeal mute, you just be suggesting the lot lines according
So
for
it's
that.
302, 303?
That's correct.
Okay.
I would like to ask the applicant. Does this address the concerns as you have expressed them?
This sounds like a new application they could submit after the decision of the planning board is reversed. It sounds like a concession that they acknowledge that the plan they submitted does not conform with the requirements and that they would have to submit a new application. You have counsel here. I don't see how they can amend the application, amend the whole subdivision after it's already been approved. And while it's on appeal, I do understand that they recognize that they didn't exclude the stormwater management systems as they were supposed to, and that they would have to submit a new application if it's reversed. So whether or not the application would be something the planning board would approve, I don't know. But and again, you have counsel here, but I don't think they can amend the whole subdivision plan in the middle of an appeal. And I think it needs perhaps resubmit.
Yeah,
I just have a question while we're right here. But Gary, let me ask you this. Does this satisfy? Does this application of moving some land around to give these tight lots some more backspace so they can get their numbers correct? Would this be satisfactory to you?
This is the first, I haven't even really seen it. This is the first I've seen it.
I just wanted to take a look at that because, I mean, it would be very nice, and whether it can be done or not, we'll let him comment on that, that if we could come to an agreement here tonight that might expedite this whole process, so that everybody comes out happy. That would be acceptable, I think, to this board. But again, Gary has a question. I think it's more of a legal.
And did you say that your engineer is here today as well?
No, he doesn't have a separate engineer. Our engineer was Ray Quirk and
Town engineer.
the town.
So is the town engineer.
He has been working with Chief Curran, their engineer. Because part of the approval, one of the conditions of the approval is that he needs to satisfy town engineer for all the different details associated with setting it up.
And that's part of the planning board approval. So
Final approval.
final approval. So we do not have to add that to tonight's approval. If we approve the plan, you just say,
No, you need to,
Gary is the appellant, so I mean, so he has to feel comfortable with it because it's his appeal.
say, I'm trying to get that.
Yeah, it's complicated. There are a lot of people.
Yeah, I wish I could tell you one way or the other, but it's kind of too much for me to take in all at once. There's been
Right. I mean,
a lot
you
of
have to
details.
Talk to your engineer and see if they.
Not really an
Satisfied.
engineer, but I just looking at it more closely myself. But I'm also concerned about the process, whether or not I would find this acceptable. Frank would find this acceptable. Other neighbors would find this acceptable. It's not right that they come here and try to change everything midstream. I mean, there's a whole process for submitting a new application. And everybody would have a chance to come and attend hearings, look at the application. The engineer would review it. People would have an opportunity. There'd be new notices. I just don't see how they can try to say, well, we think we found a way to fix it now when it's on appeal.
And may I address that? I believe that's not procedurally, that's not an accurate statement of the procedure.
I just didn't hear you. I'm sorry.
It's not an accurate representation of the procedure. As you mentioned, as Carol mentioned, there are conditions that the approval was conditional. And we're working with Ray Corber, the engineer, as we have all along. Making a small lot line adjustment to, as this is proposed, is something for technical review. It's not another application. You don't go back over everything all over again. And Mr. Castanino, I know you latched on saying this is a big concession that we are wrong. It's not that. It's trying to work with the neighbors, work with somebody who has filed an appeal. But at the same time, we have to defend ourselves, and the arguments he makes legally about his appeal are wrong. You can't change the rules in the middle of the game. You can't say what might have been proposed or might have become the land use ordinance is what we have to follow. No, you have to follow what you have and what the planning board was looking at, advised by its lawyer, advised by its engineer. Those are the rules that everybody was following. And so we have to defend ourselves on the process itself. And that process was appropriate. And the planning board did not misconstrue or make a mistake in terms of how they applied the ordinance as it's written now and as we followed it.
Would you please comment?
Yeah. So what is being suggested? Well, let me back up. This board can either affirm the planning board's decision, basically dismiss the appeal, or it can say, we agree with the appellant and reverse the planning board's decision. This board can't approve that. What you could do, I suppose, is put this appeal on pause while they try to work it out. Now, you have, by statute, you have to make a decision within 90 days, but I believe the appellant could waive that requirement if you wanted to do that.
And they would include the planning board in that process.
They would, with the planning board, they would figure out what needs to be done, whether it has to go back to the planning board or whether, as the applicant is saying, it's a technical change that only requires the engineer to sign off on it. So that's if you want to go that route. But I'm not sure you need to get to that because
I've done a few of these over the years. And I'm an engineer and a lawyer. So a piece of paper put down and made changes, and then gone to the planning board, zoning board, or whatever. Not from time to time. And that's something that the applicant can do. You've got something that it sounds like it doesn't really obstruct your approval. It doesn't create a big problem for you. You are willing to make an adjustment. It will solve the water problem. Isn't that the answer?
There is no water problem because the engineer said, the town engineer said this, we've satisfied the stormwater
Water
issue. It's the calculation issue for
Okay.
the appellant here. So that's something that we're looking forward to getting the feedback from the town's engineer on. But we did have to defend ourselves based on sort of the process that was followed.
So how do we get this resolved quickly for you? To him, to Mr. Casagino's satisfaction? It sounds like he's given us the course of action. Now we just do it.
I think the town engineer will, I believe this is just a review. Because it's not a major change, it's just some lot lines. I think that will satisfy Mr. Casagnino. But at the same time, we've got these legal challenges he's made that we have to defend ourselves on. So I think this board could also deny the appeal and let the engineers work through the technical review. And if he wishes to pursue it further, he can. But we are mindful, we made an awful lot of changes. The project got smaller and smaller because of the feedback from the planning board, because of the feedback from the abutters. And we're considering this, we proposed this because people spent an awful lot of time. The abutters came here, the planning board spent night after night after night. Carol has done incredible work. And so we're trying to make this work after somebody puts so much time and effort into it.
Welcome to my life.
Yeah.
Okay, but I also want to see something that can be done expeditiously. Sounds like it's inexpensive. It's almost sounds like you have an agreement already, but I'm sure Mr. Cassidy wants to see it in writing. On with the project.
I just want to add again, and I think I said before that the appellant would need to agree to waive that 90-day deadline. I think both parties would have to agree to that. And if they don't agree, and so you're looking at a decision by, I think it would be mid-August. Appeal was filed in May, June, July, August. So if they don't agree, then you do need to make a decision.
Right.
And again, the decision can't be to approve that. The decision has to be either. Well, the decision has to be either affirm the planning board's decision, reverse the planning board's decision, or put it on hold while they try to work it out. Basically continue this hearing.
Even if we affirm the planning board's decision, they're still gonna work it out. There's still things that they can do to appease.
If you affirm the planning board's decision, they could still make those changes. Right.
Correct.
I think we should state it. What do you think? We state it as affirm the planning board decisions with the amendments that we discussed this evening.
As long as
No, you can't.
You can't.
You can't make any amendments.
it's the
Again, it's either
We're not.
it's either affirm their decision, reverse their decision, or continue this case to a later date.
I don't, the possibility of going out past the 90 days might not be required.
True. I mean, it could get it done, could still get it done in June or July. Right. So, I mean, in other words, basically, you could just not make a decision tonight and continue this case.
And give him a chance to look at what they're proposing to see if it's in his mind, it's workable or it achieves the aim that he was looking for.
I think we should open. Don't the public get
It is a public hearing.
we need.
Well, this is a public.
Why don't we, before we make a decision on that, let's hear from the public.
Okay, second.
Trying to avoid. Okay. A second. All those in favor? Is that, excuse me, is that acceptable? Yeah.
Good evening, Tammy, Jeanette Dutilly. Just Miles, just for correction. Not everybody's going to be happy. This whole room was loaded with the butters from Mansion Hill.
I hear.
And not one of them were in favor of this whole development. I had put a proposal out there with the planning board to meet each party, the abutters and the developers, halfway, would the developers consider cutting their development in half? Just like that, they said no. There was no questioning from the board. They just let it go through on the planning board. Delia just got turned down because of impact of abutters. Every abutter that was sitting in this room was ignored. I stayed for 2 more meetings and gave a very clean, kind opinion of what I thought of how they handled the night they made a decision at the planning board. They all looked at me like deer in the headlight. It is impacting. It's impacting on all the abutters. It's impacting on our water system. I don't have an old washing machine. I have a new washing machine because my old washing machine I thought was old enough that it was coming up with an error code for water pressure. I've lived maybe 100 feet from where I live now my whole entire life. I've never had any issues with showering, doing my dishes, doing my laundry. There's an impact on our water. There's an impact on the families that have made families, as have the ones that were just talking on the previous case here tonight. There's a lot of impact with this development going in. It is a very, very wet area. And where it's not wet, there is a lot of slope. Once they take these trees out, the root system is not going to absorb the water as it would if the trees were still there, there's already been major problems with a person at the foot of the hill having over 6 feet of water in their basement, costing them a lot of money for repairs and damages. I know Mr. Casagino came in here tonight about the drainage, but there's a lot more going to impact a lot of people, the livelihoods of the abutters up there. And I really wish this could be taken back to the planning board before any final decision gets made. And I would like everybody to be listened to, not just the developer side. Gary has legitimate reasons. Delia has to follow the rules. She has to follow whatever town ordinances are. These people should have to do the same. They are impacting the lives of so many up there, so many that took the time to come to these meetings and say their concerns, and the concerns were not listened to. It is time the people that live in the areas get listened to as well. What's good for one's good for the other. You need to think of the impact on everybody. I had asked twice at the planning board meetings, and the selectman chairman, O.J. Robinson, said, we do not need a complete environmental impact study. I had asked for it several times. We have wildlife that will come here in the spring and fall during migration that we know nest up in that area because it is so wet. Recently, which is a rarity, we've had an owl around here. Where does it roost? It roosts up on Mansion Hill in that location. There's going to be a high impact with this development. And I really think there needs to be more adjustments made than just the water drainage. And I know I'm not the one that put the appeal in, but I have major concerns, as do all the other abutters. And with them in here, I did not hear one person say they were for this development. And it's because there is going to be impact with the water flow down at the foot of the hill. Once Forest Ridge went in, the neighbor across from me had all kinds of problems. I came to the town manager that was here at the time, Butch Burbank, and told him how one of the drain off brooks that abutted my property had gotten closed off prior years back. They opened that up. That helped a little bit, but there's still a lot of drainage and a lot of work that has to be worked on to ease the problem. This is going to have more water flow coming down the hill, create more problems. And you got the town daycare right there. You got other houses, you know, beyond the town daycare, up on the upper end of Pollard Road that are all going to be affected. I guess Tamara Ham's not aware of this. She's one of the selectmen as well. She owns a house across from the town daycare. That brook right there will feed into her basement from more water runoff. So I just hope you don't make a drastic decision tonight, because I'm speaking for all of Mansion Hill pretty much. Nobody's told me otherwise in the past, and I'm telling wrong. They are impacted in multiple ways. And I really hope you take that into consideration. That's all I have to say for now. Thank you very much.
Thank you for getting up. I didn't realize there were other people who
Yeah.
hadn't spoken, so I apologize
Yeah.
to anybody who hasn't spoken.
Yeah. No, there's going to be impact with traffic. I showed the select board one night the video I took. Cars were deadlocked. All of Pollard Road from where the new police station's going. It was deadlocked one weekend. It was coming out Maple Street. It was coming out Church Street. It was coming out School Street. Nobody could go anywhere. Main Street was packed wall to wall with cars. This happens quite often. This development is going to put more. Anybody can do studies, but those studies are from people that don't live here, that aren't impacted. I, for one, am impacted with the traffic. I'm impacted with the water pressure. When this development goes in, there's going to be way more impact on that. So I just hope you look at the whole picture. I know you haven't, been privy to the meetings as far as sitting in there, but I just want to give you a quick outline of what's going to happen. The people have not been listened to on Mansion Hill. There's impact on the children, the environment. I really think a complete environmental impact study should have been done. OJ has told me point blank, do not continue trying to find another route for the roadway to go. I suggested through Forest Ridge. They said there's no chance of that. The town just acquired, or at the end of the month, will be finally owners of the Campers World area. I believe another part of the Clark family owns land there. I had mentioned possibly having this new development go through the Campers World area, work things out with the current owners. I guarantee you they would give right-of-ways. 99% guarantee you they'd give a right-of-way. There would be less impact on the residents on Mansion Hill and on Pollard Road and on East Spur Road and Connector Road if the traffic were to be routed through the Campus World area once a bridge gets put in, and possibly have Mansion Hill as a temporary route and then later closed off once Campus World gets developed. Have them go out up to Route 3 North, Lincoln, and that way there will not be the congestion that there already currently is that they're going to be adding to. So I just needed to give my opinion, and this is all my opinion based on what I've been dealing with, what I've been seeing, and what I've been hearing. And like I say, I'm a native here. I've lived here for 62 years, and I know firsthand.
Do you have any comments or questions?
No, thanks.
Miles?
Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Very professionally done, very nicely done. I would add, I would ask if there's anybody else in the audience who wants to speak and hasn't had an opportunity to do so.
Okay, Frank?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes, good evening. My name's Frank Prosciutto. I live at
Thank you.
16 Valley View Lane. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, we can.
I support Mr. Casangino's appeal and agree that an error was made by the planning board interpreting the ordinance and not enforcing the requirements for adequate usable space in this matter. And I respectfully disagree with Attorney Carey about his characterization of how the ordinance reads. The land use plan ordinance, it's a single governing document. The provisions are effective and are to be read in their entirety. A definition section is provided when the ordinance is a matter of convenience. However, it does not include every defined term of the ordinance. In this instance, the definition of adequate usable space is found within Article 8. This does not make the definition itself limited to that section. Its inclusion within Article 8 requires certain criteria are met before considering any special exception. Let me read again from the from the ordinance section A. And I'm quoting from the ordinance. After review and adherence to all the specific criteria in this ordinance, the Board of Adjustment may grant a special exception, provided that A, the site is suitable for proposed use, structure, or development, that the specific site is an appropriate location for the proposed use, structure, or development. And this includes adequate usable space. It's clear the words provide that sets forth conditions which must be met before a special exception may be granted by the ZBA. The conditions themselves are not subject to special exception. The definitions are included here to clearly identify the criteria that must be enforced before granting a special exception. I'd also like to address the statements about moving the definition of adequate usable space to the definition section of the ordinance was defeated during the recent town meeting, and so the voters don't want it. The proposed amendment did not alter the requirements of the LUPO. The definitions and requirements are already in force. The proposed amendment going to the town sole purpose was to duplicate the definition standards for adequate usable space to make it, quote, easier to find. I'm going to read from the February 28th. I'm going to repeat it. I know Gary just did. Planning board minutes. After town meeting, the planning board, this is right from the minutes, will take appropriate steps to include it being the definition in the site plan review regulations and subdivision regulations where it will be easier to find and access as recommended by the town attorney. There is no change in what is required. There's no change that's required in the ordinance. It's already existing. They were merely duplicating it to move it up front and make it clear. Reading again from those minutes, the standards will be easier to find and access. Then there's a note. The definition and standards for adequate usable space are already in Article 8, Article 8, Board of Adjustments, Section A, Board of Adjustments related to appeals and or special exceptions. This move makes the standards easier to find within the 100-page document recommended by the town attorney. I don't know how it could be any more clear that these are a part of the ordinance. The ordinance is effective in its entirety. You can't just say, well, that's just a definition for them and not for anyone else. I would also like to clarify that the planning board withdrew its support for the amendment because the board determined it needed more time to understand the impact of steep slope criteria within the definition. From the February 28th, 24 planning board minutes, page 6, Member Bowden, quote, Member Bowden feels since it's already on the ballot for the March meeting, the planning board should stand outside the meeting and tell people to vote no on number 4, due to the planning board needing more time to revisit it. Chair Spano states that the original intent was for floodplains, etc., but didn't give any consideration for steep slopes. The only reason that the planning board withdrew its support for it is it felt, and there was much discussion, that it needed more time to determine about what it would do with steep slopes. And giving it more prominence didn't seem to make sense to them. It had nothing to do with drainage systems whatsoever. And it's clear that that's the case. And then it's clear that from the discussion that the concern was solely for that and not any other criteria related to adequate usable space. And been being told that adequate usable space requirements are already enforceable anyway, the voters concurred. I asked the board to reverse the decision of the planning board, which approved the subdivision. And I am concerned about, and I don't disagree, maybe there's time allowed here, but to let the planning board's interpretation stand at this point or make that decision, it just makes no sense in this situation. It's clear it should have been enforced. It wasn't. There may be a solution at hand. We don't know what that is. And I like share with Gary, I'm a little concerned about process here. The only thing this board can determine is whether they made a mistake or they didn't make a mistake. And I'm also concerned about process where I don't know. Can you just simply start changing the lot lines and make that and call that a minor change? That's the way it's being characterized, but I'm not sure if that's the process. I'm not the one that can best answer that. But it's being represented that the conditions being looked at by Mr. Korber would include this, and Mr. Korber, that was not part of the conditions that were set for the approval. The approval has very limited things that he is looking at, and lot line adjustment is not one of them. So I'm not sure how this gets resolved in that manner. But again, I'm not sure that's an issue for this board, but it is a concern that if it stands, that it's in violation of the ordinance, which clearly, it seems to me, states that drainage systems should be excluded from adequate usable space. Thank you. And I know a lot of people, I don't disagree, have spent a lot of time on this. This is just something that got missed and slipped through, but it needs to be addressed and resolved. Thank you.
Thank you for your time. Attorney Johnston, what recommendations would you make to the board, given where we are right now and some of the recent comments for action tonight?
I wonder whether.
By the way, I didn't put you on the spot.
I wonder whether we could take a brief recess and I could consult with the board privately for a few minutes. And
Make the motion to put the non-public session.
it's not a non-public session. It's a non-meeting. Yeah.
We'll step out, I guess. Is that easiest? Yeah. What do you usually like to do?
Well, we leave. So they leave, and I'm kind of in an awkward situation because I work for the planning board too, and so I don't know if I should stay or if I should. Okay. Are you gonna take the tape off or how can it out? Yeah. Carol. Recorder off. Oh.
Oh, yeah. You, so they can't hear.
Thank you. Thank you.
He's part.
The audio, see the audio mic way over on the left, it's jumping up and down. Click on that, bottom left, shut that off.
Okay, I think we're all back in. So take it away.
Thank you. The zoning board has reached a decision this evening. And
Wouldn't say you've reached a decision. You've received advice from legal counsel.
well, I think that's even better.
Uh,
Received advice from legal counsel,
which you can consider in making a decision.
considering making a decision. Thank you. And you're gonna read the whole.
I have a motion to make. I agree with the applicant. that The requirements about lot coverage and usable space are different from minimum lot size requirements. The ordinance as written does not require the drainage system to be excluded from minimum lot size. The usable space language only has to do with special exceptions. It is not involved in the case. We cannot reverse the planning board's decision on any other basis. Therefore, I do not think the planning board misapplied the ordinance. I move to approve the planning board's decision. Do I have a second?
Second.
Favor?
Aye.
Yes, yes.
Thank you very much.
Any other comments? Go ahead. Anything you want to add?
Thank you. Have a good night. We're gonna do the minutes.
Okay.
So email me that first, I'll have to put it in the-
Okay, good night.
Good evening. Arrivederci.
For the minutes.
Let's take care of the minutes.
Yep. Yeah. You're still in session. The minutes, which one?
First one is April 3rd. I'll make a motion to approve April 3rd's minutes.
Second the motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Second one is April 17th.
Motion to approve the minutes.
I will make that motion.
Okay.
To approve.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
May 1st minutes. I'll make a motion to approve May 1st minutes.
I'll second the motion. All in favor?
Aye.
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 And I do, I have a question about May 15th. That all the red that the microphone did not pick up. And I'm wondering why. I mean, this could happen often, why there isn't someone here to monitor what's happening in the room.
Okay, so the problem is that I think initially that some of the people thought the microphones were going to make it louder for everybody to hear in the audience, and the other people thought that it was just for the recorder and for the Zoom. But what we discovered is that we have to take the batteries out the second the meeting is over with, because apparently the batteries are draining while we're not using them. So it's not satisfactory. But we're trying this new thing of only putting the batteries in right before the meeting, which is what we did now, taking them out right afterwards, and then checking them regularly. And I don't think we realized that they would be drained this quickly. So it was partly a draining, and then a couple of members of the planning board don't really participate that often, and so their microphones were still working because they never turn those on.
I
So-
think that I can guess who.
So we
I'll,
would like a better system, but we don't have one right now. The old one that we had when the recorders were trying to do the minutes, they had to turn them up almost to 100 and they still had trouble hearing them. So with these, they can turn it up to just 40 and they can hear it and do a better job at doing the minutes. But anyway, it's just not working that well.
okay, so I will make a motion to approve the partial minutes from May 15th because they're not complete.
Right, they are not. But I don't think we can, unless everybody has an auto
Mhm.
graphic
gonna-
memory.
No, they're not gonna be amended. They don't have the information.
Yeah, we don't.
Undecipherable.
Unless they
basically,
wanna-
is what's happening to the recordings and the technological difficulties.
Something.
We've lost the trans.
So I'll
Right,
approve incomplete minutes, I guess, but that's all.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna approve them as,
Second.
what would you say?
But did you have a hearing?
Mhm. Well, it was a continuation because there was not a quorum. So it's nothing,
So we didn't.
nothing was really discussed,
yeah, there was nothing of
It was my
substance that
case.
night.
but I'm not gonna say they're complete.
There was no.
Right, so we.
Well, there was a
but
quorum,
We can't,
there was just a quorum in order to say we don't have a quorum.
Okay.
Yeah.
Alright.
No, yes, we are not doing well technologically speaking.
and I
here.
wonder if you. About the alternates, the two alternates I proposed.
Okay, so I did the one and then I just kept getting interrupted, so I couldn't
So
get the second one. But can you ask him just to send me something?
Greg Reynolds did, that's the one you
No,
printed, but Peter
I-
Rowell had already sent you one 2 weeks ago.
Okay, that one I couldn't find.
How many people are we in need of? One?
Well, at least two,
At least two.
and we can change we can have up to 5, but our bylaws say, I forget, 2 or 3. So we could change the bylaws, in order to make it 5. And I think you have to, because this is crazy.
Getting bad.
This is not
Both of the
good.
two gentlemen that I proposed are full-time residents. They're both businessmen. Have retired here, have volunteer in their soul. They are volunteers at Ned's. They're involved in churches around here and they're good people. And
Right,
I
you're
just
an
asked them if they would
elected board.
because
You're an elected board, so you could appoint that guy right now.
I would like to appoint, I will make a motion to appoint, that's Greg Reynolds as an alternate. And I would like to,
Let's do one at a
Yeah.
time. Okay, I'll take a second to Greg Reynolds.
Okay.
All in favor?
I,
So we'll take Greg Reynolds as an alternate. And then if we could get, I do believe I saw
We-
something from the other gentleman.
I would like to make a motion to appoint Peter Rowell. He has notified Carol and as an alternate and,
Do we have anything? I mean, I just don't see it in front of me. At least I can look at this letter and
Well,
Peter lives at Forest Ridge. He was a businessman. He's retired. His wife has just retired. They'll be up here full time. He's also a long-term Ned's volunteer.
is he registered to vote yet?
yeah, he has to be a
I
registered
believe-
voter and a resident. And he has to be a
They-
resident.
He's a resident,
Primary home or second home?
primary home. They moved here. last
Oh,
summer.
okay. Oh, I thought I didn't hear that part.
Said they were moving here.
Oh, no, they've moved here last summer.
Okay. You know what? I can check on the board to see if they're registered to vote right now.
Okay, why don't you do
Yeah.
that?
Both of them, if you would, just to
Okay,
make
what's
sure.
what are the names again?
Greg
Greg Reynolds and Peter Rowell.
Peter,
And when you get someone.
ROWELL.
Invitation, you've been.
Delia, how do you spell his name?
Rowell, ROWELL.
Okay, and Peter Rowell and the other.
Greg
one?
Reynolds.
Greg?
Greg,
Reynolds.
RYNOLDS.
Okay, let me go check.
No, we are all set.
Thank you.
For your time.
Volunteer.
A lot of deer.
I see a lot of deer when I.
Well,
go
he's
home.
going right to the hotel down the street.
Only driving half a mile to the hotel.
But
So you're in
thanks for
good
the
shape.
warning.
Thank you for your time. Really appreciate that.
I hate.
We haven't adjourned because we,
The warning.
I know. Everybody knows your name. and
But
contact.
everybody says.
They're both registered to vote.
I will make a motion to appoint both alternates, Greg Reynolds and Peter Rowe. Effective when they get sworn in, I guess. They gotta get sworn in.
You already did the one.
Oh.
The second one is who?
Peter. Rowe.
Peter Rao.
I'm tired.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay.
You're both on.
I make a motion to adjourn.
Second,
Aye.
9:28.
Again. We're building more.
Thank you.
We're not naming the road to Monty. Nothing is gonna be named after him. Nothing is gonna be named after me. And that's it. Not gonna have that name based on